and also got a call from the original card owner that said, "Who are you guys and why are you charging me?" To which we said, "I mean, I don't know. Like, that's what's going on your side." And somebody had stolen a credit card from a gas station.
Welcome back, Levelin Up Nation. This is your host, Brigham Blackham, your success story strategist. So stoked to have Aaron Kirkham, my good friend, on today. And I asked him, "Hey, what like qualifies you to come on the show?" And he said something I thought was so profound. He said, "My chin." And I was like, yes, absolutely. It's your beautiful chin.
It.
Absolutely. He is a stud when it comes to short-term rentals. And today we have a very themed episode. We're talking about the spooky side of short-term rentals. And yes, it's going to be amazing. We're going to have a great time talking about how to equip you to not just walk in faith, but to be able to take those things that are spooky for a lot of new hosts or people that have been doing it a long time and take some of their power away, because we're going to help you be more prepared. And you can have some of these lessons that we've experienced at a significant discount, because we were the ones that paid the price for the lesson. You get them at a steep discount. So really grateful to have you on today. Aaron is from Conmigo Vacation Rentals, and you also have another company, but you're fix and flipper. You've done tons of interactions with building and creating short-term rentals, helping people go from start to finish. You got a great group on Facebook as well that I enjoy being a part of with the super hosts. It's not a official group that is Airbnb, but Airbnb super hosts. You done a great job building that, over 6,000 people, which is awesome. So welcome to the call, Aaron. How are you doing today?
Finer than frog hair. Just
I love it.
At it. Yeah, no, doing good.
Wonderful. Well, let's start in here. When you hear new hosts say, "Well, man, I'm so scared of X, Y, or Z," what are the few things that pop up first that are spooky for short-term rental hosts?
Short-term rentals.
Just short-term rentals.
It's just easier. No, I jest in it, but I mean, it's one of the jokes that I'll be honest, whenever some comments on new host, I always just put a meme of someone that's like, "Run," or like, don't do it, because it can be daunting, and there's a lot more that people don't think about. But probably the biggest thing that I say to a lot of people is just remember, you're setting up a micro hotel. I mean, that's what you're doing. And so you need to be aware that 24/7 customer service or iteration of that is more important. Maintenance is now important, cleaning staff, marketing. So most of the time people see or hear a podcast like this and they're like, "Oh, that one guy can do it. I totally can do it. You get all this money and it's easy." And then you just don't realize that there's a huge back end to it. And then months later, you have to quit because they didn't plan numbers well enough or whatever it might be. So it is a business. So look at it as a business, and it's a micro hotel. And so you think, okay, if I'm setting up a new business, it's a hotel. What are the things I need to be aware of?
I love it. When you think of, let's say, infestations, that's one that I've heard people be like, "Oh, this is so scary." If you have bugs, bed bugs, you've got cockroaches, you've got all these spiders. There are tons of different ways that bugs can get in a short-term rental. Maybe people brought them in because they didn't, set their bag from their picnic outside. Sure. They brought it in. So there's so many different ways. What have you done to be able to prepare yourself when those infestations come? How do you make sure that they don't totally tank a listing, ruin your reputation, and make you quit?
Yeah, well, I mean, prevention's a big deal. We were really fortunate. At the same time we started our company, there was another pest control company that was also a host. Uinta Pest Solutions is, I mean, granted, they're not in all of our markets, but for the Utah market, they're there, and really having a really good relationship with those types of people are a big deal. So it's a prevention aspect. And then the other aspect of it too, I mean, recently at a property in southern Utah, we did have a mice infestation. Legitimate, it's just an older home where mice come in, and it happens every season, in the sense of when it gets cold, bugs come. And so it's also an experience thing of just knowing the seasons in your market and how ecologically critters and things shift in your market are another aspect of it. And really with this specific mice one, I mean, mice were going around, and there's an aspect of where you can control the controllables. Like if a guest wants to leave because they find mice, like they're super valid. Like I cannot control mice, but what I can do is do the best prevention, and then when the issues, just address it head on. Probably the coolest. This is more of a shout out to you and to Best Solutions, but by having a good relationship with your service provider once. I mean, this was in the very beginning, so we were a little bit more agile and robust in some ways about how fast we could react to things. But when guests message us at 7 o'clock at night and said, "Hey, there's a ton of ants here. You know, I get it. You know, I'd love for somebody to come and service it." I texted our service provider. He went to Pest Solutions, and then 30 minutes later, we got a call from our guest that said, "I never intended for someone to come out tonight, but like, wow, thank you so much for sending somebody." And I was like, I didn't, because my service provider just took the initiative, and he just went out, was relatively close to some of his operations, and he serviced it and got it addressed because he understood what the market is, meaning what our industry is, and the need for speed sometimes. And really it was that experience that, I mean, we were committed to them. I mean, not for life, clearly things changed. Like we were pretty deep in with them because of that service level. And so I would say for all that stuff, it's going to happen. So prepare for it, and then have appropriate plans in place, and just accept the fact that you can control what you control. And like, sorry, I can't control bugs, but they die, and we get somebody out there to improve the circumstance accordingly.
Yeah, that's excellent. A little bit of preparation goes so far. I have a little expression: prior planning prevents present problems. You've maybe heard that before. The 5 Ps of preparation. And anytime you have a situation like that and you have a connection, it's often who can go service that, because it's not that those are very difficult situations. Like I've had them where sometimes ants get in through the front door under a weather stripping, and it takes 1 or 2 sprays of a can of Raid. It's super easy, but it's also one of those that I'm not going to drive 2 hours to do that. So having a good working relationship with your cleaners or runners, people that can actually go and be there within an hour or less, really helpful. So we've been able to do that where at times, 10 minutes after they make a complaint, we have someone over there because she lives right next door, spray it, and then, sweep it up, and it's done. So I think that preparation is so key. So thank you for that. Now, when you talk to newer hosts, you also have this, they're like, oh, what if there's all these parties? What are different ways that you've been able to squash some of the bad guests before they even book? Or once you have a party, how do you mitigate the risk of damage, of issues, things like that?
I always joke, and I always go to the party because they're great. I mean, I just love the ragers that we have at some of our places. I'm teasing. In the first 6 months of us becoming host, we had 2 large scale parties, 111 people and 120 people over the course of 3 months, some firearms, all that kind of stuff. So we learned in the beginning that clearly we sucked. And so there's a lot that you can do. And I think the majority of it, again, is that preparation aspect, but more of a vetting and just an acknowledgement of knowing what type of unit you have and the associated guest avatar that is going to book that place. I mean, if you have a basement apartment, you're never going to have booking or parties. Nobody wants to have a party with somebody upstairs. I mean, there's stupid people if you have a really nice downstairs and stuff, but like it's on them for you not understanding it. So it's knowing the type of unit that you have. So if it's a whole home, also your price point, sometimes where if you go lower, there is an aspect of that. There is the concept of locals, but we have had instances where it's not just locals. And so I know that sometimes it's been an indicator for people, but we haven't found that to be 100% true. And so I put a caveat in that. But a lot of it is just asking questions and vetting through a guest. And so best example that I have a couple of years ago, and this was our own personal home when I was getting into it, somebody messaged and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a celebration at your home." Oh, okay, cool. What's your celebration? Having a birthday party. Oh, how old is somebody turning? 21. We'll start turning. Oh, is it just you, or are there going to be other people? Well, there's 5 of us girlfriends. Okay, is it just the 5? and our boyfriends. Oh, okay. Are you doing anything prior to coming to our home? Where we're going to go to this specific club, and then our intention was to come back. To which now this celebration has turned into 10 individuals coming back from club life, most likely inebriated, to my home in a residential neighborhood. And so traditionally how people approach it is they squash it. But I said, sounds game. I'm totally fine with that. I will need photo IDs of every person for insurance reasons. And there's a $500 host fee or a party fee for our home. And the reason I do it that way is I am more than happy if I'm making $500 extra, more than happy to go sit in my van or something in front of the house to watch and monitor things. If I'm making $400 in a night, right? Or pay the teenage kid down the street or whatever it might be, like there's that. But the reality that happens is a $300, $400 stay has now turned into an $800 to $1,200 stay for these individuals, where they have to provide all this information when in reality they're going to say no. And every time, we've never had anybody accept that, because it just becomes astronomical for them and what their associated charges are. And so that's one thing, as well as the other approach that we've taken for homes that are large and conducive is we'll plan the party. Meaning, like, if we have some homes that are larger that are conducive to that, so like we just build in a structure and prepare the home accordingly, and we say, yeah, it's acceptable here. I mean, one of them is a large mansion-like home in the Park City area that it is conducive. So we host weddings, we have corporate event approach, and there is extra charges, but obviously there's extra services. And so rather than looking at it fully as a negative, we've evaluated the asset and then say, how are ways that we can say no, but at the same rate, make it profitable for us.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to have the dollars that they are paying become their screen. If they're serious about it and they're like, well, I know we're going to be taking care of the property, we're going to have fun, they're maybe willing to pay that. So that type of guest, they screen themselves saying, yes, I'm willing to take care of the property and I want my cleaning deposit back. I think it's really awesome that you have some properties that are catered to parties, because there are people that want to go to a short-term rental to have a celebration. So looking for those specific types of properties. I only have one that's in that type of vein. I have one in Utah. It's set aside from farther than most neighbors, so you can actually be pretty loud. We used to have rock bands play in there all the time.
Cool.
And didn't have complaints because it wasn't close enough that anybody could hear. And it could house 50, 60 people. And it's a great event venue, but not to have everybody sleep there. So when you are thinking about pre-screening guests, we talked about pre-screening parties. There are a lot of different tools out there, a lot of different ways that you can do that. What are some of the red flags, if you will, that you've seen that work to say, hey, this is actually someone being a scammer, or this is someone to get a free stay? How do you prevent those types of guests from showing up?
I think it's kind of that vetting thing, just answers not lining up. When people ask and things are a little bit weird and when I say weird, newer profiles are common aspect of it. Former reviews, we do read when you see other people say, and then just asking and saying, hey, said review told about how you were smoking at a property, consistent, can you just give insight? Which then there's two parts to it. One is getting their side of the story, but then also going to that host. And sometimes you can just tell that hosts they don't like hosting, or they're disgruntled. And so all of their reviews are negative towards other people because of reasons. And so it's kind of deciphering between just the host's approach or is it that guest? And so there's asking those questions and making sure that things line up that way. I think the other aspect of it too is your threshold and your preparation for potential damage. For us, we have some incidental insurance in place so that for incidentals, when things get stained and damaged and whatever, there's a way to be compensated. Outside of the OTA insurance programs, OTA online travel agencies like Airbnb's guarantee and the VRBO VRBO insurance policy. So outside of those, as well as appropriate homeowners insurance. And so based off of our risk tolerance and our ability to some of that stuff. That also goes into the conversation of like how willing we are to accept a shady guest. Not that shady is the right word. And then the other aspect of it too, this is a little thing that I teach our team, is don't chase the money, because the cheap ends up being expensive. There's such a tendency, especially in the beginning when you're new, and you only have one listing, to say, okay, if I just lower my pricing, I could get $40 tonight, which is better than no dollars. But oftentimes, same day bookings late at night, when it's more than $50, I mean, you're opening yourself up to a lower echelon of people who traditionally, more commonly, down on their luck, going through different things and looking for a cheap place to do illicit activities, whatever they may be. So it's more of a concern of the type of unit. And I would say, I'm communicating this way because most people who are getting into this, it's traditionally basements, 2-bedroom apartments, 3-bedroom homes, 4-bedroom homes. And so the lower you're doing it, you're just opening yourselves up to the potential of someone who's only paying $40 for your $500,000 home, or whatever it might be. So that's kind of the other dynamic, is setting your thresholds of like, okay, and sometimes you have to test it. I'm not saying that this is a perfect thing. Testing it, because if you have a large home that $300 is your minimum, like that still might open up to the same sort of conversation, lowering the standard of the home to get a little bit extra money, but in the end, they're going to cause an extensive amount of damage. One instance is somebody did that. We lowered it. They booked it for a week, which was cool, and stole TVs, stole just all about not the appliances, but like the carry away appliances. So lowering your standards sometimes leads to that. And another huge thing is we don't allow people to book for other people. That has led to 100% problem. Meaning, I'm booking this for my whoever, my friend who's on hard times, my sister who's running away from domestic violence, my nephews and stuff, because you're one step removed and the responsibility barrier is no longer with the actual person. I mean, once we actually had a gang in a unit who had firearms and shot through the floor. Which, I mean, how can you control what people do? But what it was is a aunt had booked it for her great nephew, and upon police and everything, not that it was like a shootout or anything, but upon the police coming, they're like, oh yeah, these are known individuals to us, we know who they are. And it was really interesting because the mother, or the aunt I should say, she was like, no, he's great, they're awesome kids, they're all, they would never do this stuff. To which then we're sending screenshots of the conversations, of the cameras, of things like that. She's like, oh, like, now let's also caveat what I've just described is a once in a 6,000 reviews approach. I mean, we've done it for 5-6 years, so it's not like that's going to happen a lot, but more so the concept, by lowering standards, you lower your standard and you're opening yourselves up to more probability of lower quality individuals coming into your home. So that's probably more the lesson than anything else.
I think that's really important to make sure you have set standards. And then when you have a guest that comes on that you notice is doing some illicit things, or for instance, they're smoking in your unit and you have rules that are clearly written out. Here's our house rules. We do not let smoking, and you actually have evidence of them on that camera going in and out smoking. You can actually kick them out, which you can't do that on a typical rental, but you have someone break a house rule, you can kick them out immediately. So, I mean, I've had 2 different times where I have had multiple video evidence of people coming in and out of the unit smoking. And I said, hey, with this evidence, I have to have you leave because you have now made it so we have to basically fumigate the apartment for a whole day, and do a little ozone machine so we can get rid of all the smoke smell. And it's a big process. So what are some of the ways that you've been able to use your security system to prevent too many people showing up that are ghost guests, those people that aren't actually on the reservation but they still show up? What have you done for those?
I'll be honest, ghost guest is something that we don't worry about. Just because it's so much work to say, you said 4 people and there's 8 people. The reality is it's more of the concept for us of how many people have we advertised that the home can host. If it's 9 people, like, okay, cool, 9 people. And if you said 5, but then just because the amount of, and I'll say it this way, my mentor, name is Sarah Brown. She's a great individual who's taught me a lot of things. At the very beginning, she has extremely luxury properties. And I said, I asked, iteration, same question. She said, I don't have cameras at most of our properties because I don't want the anxiety in my own life. And that would be a concept that people feel, I mean, it's just so tempting if you have a camera at your first unit for you to watch, and you're excited that they showed up. So there's that aspect, but then you see, there's 8 guests and you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't say, there's all that kind of stuff. When in reality, like, what's the real issue? Like, it happens in hotels. It happens generally if it is beyond the threshold that's appropriate. I mean, if you say that there's 8 and 20 show up, yeah, like clearly action needs to happen. But like if there's 8 and 10 show up, like, is that what you want? No. But at the same rate, it also then comes down to issues, problems. And the other piece of it too is vetting. I mean, for us, it's that same conversation of, if you want the right people in your unit, only let the right people in your unit. And then, another thing that we do as well that stimulates, one, from a brand perspective, as well as appropriately meeting with guests, is we do pre-calls prior to guests showing up, not to vet them or anything, but more so, hey, you're showing up today. Do you have the code? And there's 2 parts to this. Really, we came from a team, and we had a team that was based overseas that was doing a lot of our guest communications, and we wanted that 24/7 approach. And we failed pretty extensively at it. They were low quality individuals who weren't communicating effectively and communicating wrong things. And so then we were losing extra fees, late checkouts, pet fees, things along those lines, because of poor quality of who our service providers were. To which we brought it in-house, but more of our approach is, one, we were paying higher, but we wanted higher quality. So we established that our communication hours would not be 24/7, but rather would be an extended period of time. And what are ways that we improve the experience, but also mitigate late night calls? And that was one of the tactics that we came up, is that we call people the day that they're showing up, saying, hey, like, just so you're aware, 10 o'clock, we will monitor the system, but we're only there for emergencies. Emergencies are water. If there's a leak, call us. If there's a fire, call the fire department. If there's a problem with the neighbor, call the police department. I can't do anything. I will just call the fire department for you. So it's also one of an expectation approach, but then also, you're coming in late. Okay, perfect. Do you have the code? Okay, you've got the code. You see it there. Now you're going into a remote area. Make sure that you download this. Here's the link for our guest book. That's the one you understand where the door is. Sometimes this happens. Just be aware of it. And it's more really education prior to them arriving, because 1, they know what to expect, and 2, they have all the resources, because that is, we've all had that experience. You show up to a new place, don't know how to get in, can't find codes, kids are tired, you're tired, all that jazz. And so that's been another way that has helped us mitigate that conversation too, is, and actually we caught a scammer that way once. So somebody had stolen credit cards of other individuals, and then was just hopping from unit to unit on our direct booking website. And our team member, they stayed at one place. Ironically, that was my basement, our very first short-term rental. And then they went to another one, which was a tiny home in the area. And our guest communications team member called. And yesterday, she called Bob, and Bob answered, and then called today for the new guest. But the name was David. Bob and David sounded the exact same and had the same amount of guests. And so we dug in deeper. And as we kind of dug in deeper, we got a call from the original card owner that said, who are you guys and why are you charging me? To which we said, I mean, I don't know, like, that's what's going on your side. And somebody had stolen a credit card from a gas station. I don't know the nomenclature of how to do that, but it was a truck driving through, their information was here, it got stolen, identity theft. Long story short, we caught the individual doing all of it, or I should say we didn't catch them. We knew that they were aware, and it was very probable, but they weren't in our unit. They were literally just sitting outside. I was in contact with the police. They came out, they did an investigation, and they couldn't prove that it was because that wasn't in our property and they weren't doing those things. Though 2 times later, they tried again with somebody else's, because we created these emails that was Bob 1010, and that was just another thing. And so, answering your question about some of that stuff, and I realize it's yet again, it's happened once over 6 years, so yet another terrible thing. So don't actually, a client once, he goes, you talk a lot about a lot of the bad stuff. So like, if you're gonna manage your home, like, can you assure us that this stuff won't happen? I was like, I can't. Like, that's also, because I'm a really big believer of telling the bad side, because I get frustrated when the influencer and the general community at large says, look at my awesome win. Yet the reality is, like, this is the back end. And, to get to this win, you had to do all these things to get there. It's a journey for all of us. But the reality is bad things happen, and diverted the question and everything, but vetting and making sure that, just using your brain. I know that sounds so stupid, but like, just using your brain, don't let yourself chase the money and focus on, I have to get bookings. Which brings me to another point too, of just understand your market and the seasonality. I think that's a huge thing that plays into the anxiety of future hosts or new hosts. And a great example, Utah is a market, especially in northern Utah. October and November is always slow, every time. And every October 1st, somebody posts in a group, says, what am I doing wrong? I don't have any bookings in October. And all of us who have rode the roller coaster are like, it's October. Nobody travels in October. People are in school. Halloween is not a travel holiday. It's also, everybody's kind of hunkered down, waiting for the travel holidays. They're saving up to go to places. So it's just an aspect of, that's what it is. And sometimes for those who don't prepare for it, they still have financials that they have to meet that month. And so they chase the money, lower bookings, and then leads to problems, because then they don't have proper insurance. They don't have process and procedure. They don't know that you can call the police. They are familiar with long-term rental laws compared to short-term rental laws. So like, education and understanding your market is another huge aspect that will help you deviate away from the anxiety that does exist in short-term rental, because it is a seasonality regardless of what it is.
And talking about seasonality, one of the ways that you can start to recognize that is not just doing it for a while, but going to data-driven places. So like, I use AirDNA. That's where I like to get most of my data. But there's also, you can talk to other hosts. You can talk to other people that are in your market. You can talk to realtors that have been selling these properties for years, and actually do some digging. Find some people that are seasoned in your market, and then connect with them and say, hey, what are the trends that you're noticing over the last few years? Yeah, in October, November, typically in Utah, bookings are a little bit slower, so you have to budget for that. Sometimes I like to take a little bit longer term bookings at a little bit of a discount, like a midterm rental during those months, because I only have one of those right now, but that's one of those that it mitigates a little bit of risk, even though you're not necessarily leaving that unit open for the higher reward during those months. So if you can do that with a few of your rentals while you're in that growth phase, that's a helpful way to at least cover the bills while you're weathering the storm. Now, I love the idea of your pre-calls. That was an excellent little tidbit there. What if you could say is the most helpful education that you've been able to get to equip yourself? Because talking to people and networking, super valuable. Connecting with the right people, going and finding a mentor or a coach. What are some of the ways that you've been able to equip yourself to go eyes wide open into the market and be able to be successful?
This is a challenging topic for me, because, and what I mean by that is, I think there's a lot of great influencers who are selling courses and mastermind stuff, but I think a lot of it too comes down to who you are and the way that you learn as an individual. I have never been good at school coursework. I took on some online courses, and they are my worst grades I've ever had. I waited till the last second. I mean, in high school grades, because really for the most part, high school is pretty straight, easy, subject to things. And my worst grade was an econ class that I had to take on because I had a full schedule. And so that's one thing for me that I learned in the beginning that I'm not good at it. Also, I'm more extrovert myself. And so going and learning from other people at events, hiring someone specifically to be my mentor, not a group mentor, has been a little bit more advantageous for me. And so I think that everybody's course is different. So understanding and knowing how you learn is probably the most appropriate. Because for some individuals, joining masterminds and so forth, that is the only way they will feel motivated, because you need external forces, and you need a group, and you need the collective thing to help you do it. Whereas actually just yesterday, somebody in the industry that everybody, I don't know about everybody, but is known as an influencer, has a group, reached to me we've had conversations over the years about joining and stuff like that. And for me, it's just, I know it's not going to be worth it, because actually his students, I've reached out to his students that are on his marketing poster and said, hey, tell me about your experience. I'm thinking about joining this group. What is it? How is it? And for me, I have found that a lot of the lessons that are taught in some of these things, they're just based off of other people's experience, which is great and appropriate. But we have also learned that by just doing it. We've bought things that are bigger than we can handle, and we've had to learn. And it's been the best education for us in our model for who we are. So that's, I'm probably saying it differently. Know who you are and how you learn is probably the first thing, because then from there you say, okay, this is how I learn. This is the resource that will motivate me. This is the curriculum, this whatever it is, because I am just not that way. My wife, she's great at courses. She crushes that stuff, and she understands it because that's who she is. And some of the courses that she's taken have been super helpful. But for me, it's been more just learning a lot. And I'll also say this, because of podcasts like this and stuff like that, most of the information that's shared in courses, private work, and all that, it's free and public. It's just it's not built and facilitated. And so really, it's just you being the master of your own education. In my approach, I do want to caveat, it's not the best, because clearly there are things that I don't know, and I am leaving opportunities on the table when I'm not joining things or taking courses. But I would say biggest things for sure, consultants, they're worth it, as long as you can vet the associated consultant or work therapist, whatever. There's a lot of different iterations of that. Those are killer, as long as it's an appropriate fit for who you are and that person. So that's one thing. I'd also say community is a huge part of it. Just being able to talk to other people. That's why I focused on building some Facebook so that people have places to go, because saying it differently, in the very beginning when we started, we had a suicide in one of our units, and I had no idea where to go and what to do. And at the time, there was a very large Facebook community that I didn't want to say, hey, terrible thing just happened, because it's not really public things that everybody wants to share, right? But I posted and I said, I have a really serious problem, and I need someone who is an expert to really help me. To which I got no comments. But at the same time, somebody poked and said, what sort of sheets should I have? And I got 287 comments. Not that I remember that number exactly ingrained in my mind, but it's moments like that I said, this sucks. Like, I legitimately need a recourse. And so I literally scoured the internet. I connected with somebody in France who had that, and then somebody in Arizona, and roundabout ways got connected and learned their experience. Because sometimes when you go through issues, it's not so much the fact that you need the education, but you need support, and you need a greater community to say, like, hey, this super sucks and I don't know what to do. And yeah, it does suck. I'll also, side note, the Airbnb is through the platform, crazy helpful, supportive. They paid for hosts, cleanups, all those things, and there wasn't anything gruesome or terrible about it. It's just the dynamic of knowing somebody is in that, which is the part of our industry. I haven't talked about it for a long time, but it happened, and it's the reality in it, and it happens to other people. So I think that I'm realizing that we've deviated, and I apologize because I'm a talker.
You're
But
good.
I'd say a lot of it is knowing how you learn, and then being willing to do it. Some people, they love the investment in themselves by joining mastermind groups and educators, and that's what others need. And others might be self-motivated, or there's the reality of never going to do it because you're always going to be stuck in analysis paralysis, and just accept it. And so then maybe partnering with someone who is doing things and saying, hey, this is my first deal, help me understand, and like, I'll give you a piece of the pie and I get a piece of the pie if that's your model. I mean, so that's some of the approach of how I've done the education for me, and would recommend it for others.
I love it. As far as my take on that, I think learning how you learn, that's an absolutely essential skill. Everyone needs to learn a method of how you accept information, assimilate it, and then apply it to your life. And everyone learns in a slightly different way. We can all learn from each other. And one of the things I think is really impactful of what you said was, don't let education only come from a course. Don't let it only come from school. You can learn from people. You can learn from podcasts. You can learn from a group on Facebook. There's all these different ways that you can assimilate that information into your problems, but don't get into that analysis paralysis. Like you said, there's so many people that they don't take action at all, even if they have the information, because it's not the information that gets the results. It's the implementation. And I think that's one of the reasons why you have a community, those people that you surround yourself with that are consistently doing it. And then get in those groups that actually push you the way that you want to be pushed. Now, there's some people that would be really turned off to, high level masterminds. You're like, oh, that's just too expensive. What's your return on investment? You're like, I don't know yet, because you just barely joined. But as you get into those groups, if they are going to help you get to that next level, like I'm talking about leveling up all the time, who do you need? Not how do you do it, usually is the way that you answer those questions. Maybe you need to hire a coach or hire a mentor or a consultant, like you said. I think that's great, because then you're getting specific, tailored ideas for your business. And I think that was excellent, because everybody will learn in a slightly different way. So thank you for that.
My grandpa always said, don't let school get in the way of a good education.
Absolutely.
Which I think it's a reality of, like, everybody learns differently. And sometimes the best education is going out on a limb, buying a house, throwing up a short-term rental, and necessity is a good educator, because you'll figure it out because you have mortgages to pay and you need to. So all depends, but I agree with that. I think it's more of a mentality. What can I do? And in some cases it is appropriate. I mean, you talked about the hiring a consultant, return on investment stuff. I've always been really apprehensive to that, because my whole approach is that same money I can invest in me and buying more houses. Like, so why would I take a dollar amount and put it here? But we hired a consultant because at the time, this was a couple of years ago, we had several micro companies at the same time we had this one, and really they were all sucking dry, and it was a terrible time of life, because I was thought I was a successful entrepreneur, when in all reality I was not. Side note, but having somebody else as a coach come in and say, like, why are you doing this thing? Well, this is the vision. Okay, well, it's not, looking at facts, it's not driving revenue, so why continue to do it? Oh, like, super valid. And why are you supporting this team member when you can see all these instances where they're not? And so I think a lot of it too, just there is huge value that comes, but I think a lot of it too is your openness and having a mentality of, like, I want to get educated, and you're coming in from a positive standpoint, not, I paid the high dollar amount, I need to get my return on investment. All of these groups, and in all education, you get in what you put out. Put in what you put out. You get in, you get out what you put in.
You get out of it what you put into it. I get you. I understand where you're coming from.
You can tell school is not a priority for me.
Well, one of the things I love about you, though, Aaron, is we connected over language. I think the first time we met at this, Cafe Rio, one of these times where it's like, hey, we're both doing short-term rentals. Let's connect. Ended up speaking in Spanish for a bit, and I was like, what was it that drove me to learn Mandarin and to learn Spanish? It wasn't that I had to. No one forced those things on me. It was, I was in an environment and I chose to do what was necessary to communicate. if you choose and you take that initiative to say, no matter what, I'm going to make sure that my idea that I have can be understood by that other person, you'll find a way to get it across. And in short-term rentals, we want to make sure that all of you guys that are listening, you come away from this with an equipped mentality that there are ways you can solve these issues. Everything that happens is solvable. Now, that might be an expensive thing to solve. It might be a person that has experienced it somewhere else in the country, like you said, maybe even internationally. But there are ways that you can solve this. Just don't give up because something hard happens. Now, there are times when things are not useful to solve. You might say, hey, you know what? What's my sunken cost? This unit, it's toast. That's okay. But sometimes you can say, hey, this is actually going to be a benefit. I've actually had some guests that were poor. They damaged some stuff, and I made more money because I had to fix stuff than I would have if I didn't. Yeah. Which is an interesting dynamic.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too. I mean, we approach failure a lot differently. Failure often leads to great things. I mean, we've had team members quit and you feel like the world's over, but then you're able to replace them with others or better teams or a better solution. I mean, in the best example once too, we had a home where a guest hit the home with their vehicle, which sounds terrible. But in the end, we made money. I mean, another example, our very first it's funny today, like, okay, Halloween, for the first 4 years of our management, there's one specific house on Halloween. Every day at 5:05, I would get a call that something had flooded, broken, or anything. And I'm waiting for the call today because we're 2 years running where we have not received the phone call. But it's this, is the water supposed to be brown? Why is the ceiling leaking? Is water supposed to be coming out of this thing? And it was the dynamics of the home, how we had built things. But really building off of that, once Super Bowl Sunday, that same home, guest had broken a faucet in the morning, had left, the entire home had flooded, like Home Alone, the Wet Bandits, inches. And at face value sounds terrible, but we were able to, 1, get the damage repaired, and 2, remodel 70% of the home from damage of technically 30-40% of the home because of, 1, the OTAs, appropriate insurance, and just being able to leverage the appropriate contracts and everything that we had in place. And basically got a brand new home, which at face value sounds terrible that you have a flood that's that bad. But on the flip side, we got a brand new home basically out of it. And it was awesome. So we love damage. Damage we approach in a very positive light, though it does suck in the instant. Great things come from it.
I think that's a great way to end this call. Thank you so much, Aaron, for pouring so much value into this and taking some of the scariness out of these spooky moments. And thanks for being here with us. It was a pleasure to chat with you, and man, great wealth of experience and knowledge. I know you've got a book that you recently wrote. Tell people where they can go find it and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, part of the hospitable host community. It's where everybody gives kind of their stories and puts them all into the group. So you can just go to hospitalhost.com and learn from, what you can from me and others. So it's a great community and great things that they're doing in that initiative. Conmigo is our company, and you're more than welcome to reach out. We have Facebook groups that are per state, building community, just because it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of things. Also, we're just finalized the Utah Short-Term Rental Association. There's my shameless plug. If you want to join from an advocacy standpoint, I'm really involved. I'm passionate about having appropriate conversations with cities rather than non-appropriate ones.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for your time, your energy, your effort, all you put into it. Guys, go check out his community. It is phenomenal, and really grateful for the opportunity to communicate with you today. Guys, keep leveling up your life. Keep doing everything you can to get to that next level, because it's worth it and you're worth it. God bless.